Welcome back, everybody. I'm Al Ruechel with Adam Smith, a political editor for the Tampa Bay Times, who will introduce our guest for today. Adam, good to see you, buddy.
You too. We're lucky to have the Libertarian nominee for governor, Adrian Wyllie, a Tampa Bay guy too.
Yeah, I'm a local, Adam.
So you have your own IT business.
Right.
You've never served in public office before.
No.
What makes you the most qualified to lead America's fourth biggest state?
Well, I think I'm the most qualified because I'm the honest guy in the race. I think it's time that we start electing people that have the right set of principles, that believe in the core philosophy that government should be limited, government should be restricted in power, and really the objective is for most Floridians is to keep government out of their wallets, out of their bedroom and their business, and that's what I intend to do.
So who do you draw from more, the Democrats or the Republicans?
The polling data says it's about equally, but by far our biggest block of support is with non-party affiliated independent voters.
Now, because that NPA number keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger,
right,
why aren't we seeing the Libertarians picking up bigger chunks of that? Because it seems to be that because there are so many parties that each one of them seems to be picking up a little bit more.
Right. Our polls indicate that I'm polling as high as the mid-20s among independent voters. So we are getting very strong support there. But part of the reason that we're not getting more currently is, according to a Mason-Dixon poll, I'm only at about 21% name recognition statewide so far. And that's because we don't have the $100 million that our competitors are likely to raise. And that's because we're not for sale to the special interests and to the global corporations. So what we have to do is we have to wage a grassroots campaign. But the good news is it's been very successful so far. We have over 1,200 very active, very dedicated volunteers statewide, and that number is growing every day.
Mm-hmm. So specifically, you're elected governor. What are the first big things you do? First three big things you do?
Well, really the economy is the first thing we need to get under control. Rick Scott has increased the state budget, as you know, by about $11 billion since he's been in office with his recent $77.1 billion proposal. The first thing we need to do is get that in check. I intend to cut the state budget by 30%. And when we do that, it allows us to do a lot of other things. And one of those is providing a 100% homestead property tax exemption. So no Floridian pays property tax on their primary residence. We can do that when we limit government spending. And we can limit the government spending just by eliminating the waste, the fraud, the abuse. You've seen it covering Tallahassee, the no-bid contracts to somebody's brother-in-law.
Okay, $77 billion budget. How much of that goes through K through 12 education?
The exact figure I don't have in front of me, but I can tell you on average it's about $12,000 per K through 12 student per year in Florida. Now, that's a phenomenal number. If that money were actually reaching the classrooms where it's supposed to go, we wouldn't have teachers that don't make a living wage. We wouldn't have teachers having to go to Walmart to buy school supplies. The problem is with the entrenched bureaucracy. The problem is with sweetheart contracts to guys like Neil Bush, Jeb Bush's brother, for the curriculum providers. What we need to do is cut the corruption out of the process so that we can actually get that money to the classroom where it belongs.
But let's cut to brass tacks. The number is almost $21 billion, less than a third of the budget is K through 12. But corruption, waste, fraud, and abuse, everybody says that.
Right.
You're talking about cutting a third of the state budget.
Right.
That's on your platform.
Absolutely.
Specifically, how are you going to do that?
Well, there's so many areas where literally you can find the fraud, you can find the abuse, you can find the corruption.
Name one big one.
All right, let's go to Medicaid. Biggest line item in the state budget. Why is it that you think that we all of a sudden have billboards across the state of Florida that say ER wait time, 11 minutes or what have you? Well, it's because Medicaid recipients can go to the ER for any ailment, the sniffles, a sore foot, what have you. They go there, and the state of Florida ends up getting stuck with a bill for $5,000. So when a responsible Floridian taxpayer who pays for their own insurance or has it through their employer is going to go to the regular doctor, a walk-in clinic, something like that, and end up with a $100 bill. If we can just do reasonable things like that, we can cut huge amounts of the waste out of the budget.
Why aren't the Republicans and Democrats then doing that? Or just one or two of those things? Well, why?
Well, I can tell you the reason. It's pure and simple corruption. Rick Scott's a prime example. Rick Scott recently signed the executive order that all state employees must be drug tested. And as you guys know, that he he owned, up until the attorneys told him he couldn't do it, one of the largest drug testing companies in the state of Florida. The attorneys advised him he had to sell it. He put it in a blind trust in his wife's name. And that's just one example of the corruption. We have to attack the corruption if we are going to get our state back from the thieves.
What about the tax base? Where is the money going to come from? If we cut all these other things out, what's going to happen to taxes?
Well, then we can cut the taxes. If the state of Florida no longer needs the budget, needs that money to engage in corporate welfare, for example, then we can give the money back. I shouldn't say give the money back. We can let the people of the state of Florida keep more of what they earn.
You know what scares people? It's not that these aren't really good ideas, but I think a lot of people say, well, how on earth would you implement them given the system that's entrenched in Tallahassee?
Well, it's real simple. Like, for example, my 100% homestead tax exemption, so no Floridian pays tax on their primary residence. Well, once we cut the state budget by a third, the state no longer needs that 6 cents on every dollar sales tax. We can reallocate 2 cents of that to the county. So what happens is the state collects all the money they need. The counties are fully funded because it's revenue neutral for them, and the average Florida homeowner has an extra $1,500 in their pocket. Simple.
I'm guessing you don't support the state taking the expanded Medicaid money.
I do not.
Okay, and I'm guessing, based on what I read on your platform, you really don't think Medicaid is a good idea in general.
In general, no. I intend to get to a point where, you know, we still have the safety nets for the people who absolutely need them, but I think it's being abused right now. And I quite frankly want to set up an economic environment where less and less people need Medicaid, need these government services. And once we start reducing the size of government and creating a level playing field for businesses, then we're going to have more jobs in this state, and we're not going to have as many people that are dependent on government handouts.
So if I'm it sounded like you were saying if I'm a poor person, doesn't have health insurance but has Medicaid,
right?
It's corruption that I'm going to, and I have an emergency, I go to the hospital. Well, how is that corruption?
I wouldn't say that a cold or the sniffles or a minor sprain is you know, an emergency room worthy. If I'm going to go to the emergency room, I'm probably on a gurney bleeding out because I need to be there because I'm paying for it.
And then Medicaid pays your bill if you don't have the money to pay for it.
Right, but what I'm saying is, shouldn't that person with a cold or just a minor condition, shouldn't they go to a walk-in clinic if they're on the state dole? Shouldn't they go to a regular doctor? Shouldn't the state get a bill for $100, $200 instead of $5,000 or $10,000?
Well, that's one of the arguments for Obamacare, is you get more people covered so they don't have to go to the emergency room that we all pay for.
But the coverage is the same, and that's what's going to happen. Once you start going to a model where to fix a problem created by government in the first place, the answer is more government, you eventually get to a point where the system is completely bankrupt and it's not sustainable. We need to go the opposite direction. We need to start weaning people off government dependency and getting to a market economy here where people have jobs, where people have prosperity, where people have the opportunities, and that's what I intend.
Now let's go towards some of the areas where some people think libertarians get into crazy town vicinity.
Sure.
You would support turning our currency over to a gold and silver currency. We would only use gold and silver to pay for our...
Well, no, not necessarily. I think that we should return to the standards we had in place prior to the 1970s. Prior to that time, our money was actually backed by gold and silver. It's been a long transition. It began in 1913 and progressed steadily until it was the final demise in the 70s, but it's not a crazy idea. It's going back to when we had an actual sound economy and when we had actual sound money and we weren't $18 trillion in debt as a nation. That's how we got there, and we can return there. And it's going to take a process, and the first step in the process is auditing and ending the Federal Reserve.
For me, Joe Schmo, Florida citizen, what are you going to do to my currency when you're governor?
I'm going to make it a lot more valuable and give it a lot more purchasing power. You know, that's one of the things I intend to do is we need to start taking Florida's reserve fund and converting it into assets that have real value. I am in favor of converting some of Florida's reserve assets into gold and silver holdings because I think that there is a possibility that the United States dollar could experience a major correction, a devaluation, or significant inflation. And when that happens, I don't want the people of Florida to be on the hook for it.
When people talk about libertarians, this cycle around District 13, Lucas Overby painted a very favorable picture.
Right.
But you're saying, we were talking before there, that he kind of comes from the left perspective, whereas when you think of libertarians, you oftentimes think of, well, kind of hyper-Republicans.
Right. Well, really, that's a misnomer. Libertarians are just people people who believe in economic freedom and individual liberty, and that government should be limited to doing the things that they're constitutionally obligated to do. So you have people coming in from the right, from the left, from the center, because they realize that that's really what they want out of government. They want a government that's going to protect our lives, liberty, and property, and other than that, pretty much leave us alone.
Will you get any chance to debate any of the candidates at all?
I've been invited to 2 out of the 4 televised debates. I'll be in the one in Broward College on October 15th, and also the one at the University of Florida on, I believe that's September 29th. So, and I'm hoping that my invites for the remaining 2 are in the mail. So I will have the opportunity to be on stage with presumably Charlie Crist and Rick Scott.
All right. Adrian Wyllie,
Thank you.
Libertarian candidate, thank you so much for stopping by. Good luck
My pleasure, guys. Thank you.